Welcome back, General Hospital fans. Get ready for another explosive episode packed with shocking betrayals, dangerous secrets, and heartbreaking choices that could change everything in Port Charles forever. But oh, the way the writers keep weaving these intricate webs, especially around Willow, Drew, Sidwell, and now the shadow of Brennan, has me sitting up straighter, heart racing, just like it did back in the early days when the Quartermains and Cassidines ruled the town. Let me share with you, in this quiet chat of ours, what has struck me most deeply about the current arc and why I find it both fascinating and heartbreaking in equal measure. Think about it, folks, the way Sidwell has slipped away from Port Charles, leaving his web of control behind, but not entirely gone. He's been pulling strings from the shadows, isn't he? And now, the medicines that Willow desperately needs to keep Drew in that locked-in state are becoming scarcer and scarcer. In my long experience with this show, I've seen how these hidden dependencies can unravel everything, turning a calculated scheme into something far more precarious. Willow's been leaning so heavily on Sidwell's guidance, relying on him to supply those paralytic drugs that mimic strokes so perfectly, to the point where she's basically become his loyal enforcer. But with him vanishing into the distance, her supply chain is drying up, and that fear is palpable. It's like watching a powerful figure whose empire is cracking under its own weight. I wonder, honestly, if this disappearance is the first real crack in Sidwell's ironclad plan, or if he's smarter than we give him credit for, pulling off one last grand scheme before he fades into the background. What hits me even harder, though, is the way this has forced Willow into a corner that feels utterly unhinged. She's been using those very drugs to control Drew, to keep him incapacitated while she steps into his congressional seat, all while balancing the chaos with her children and her family. But now, the thought of Brennan, that poor soul who's been caught in the same toxic web, starting to spill out new evidence against Drew. Oh, this is a storm brewing that could change everything. If Brennan's testimony comes through, it might prove just how deeply Drew has been entangled, not just in Willow's schemes, but in something far darker and more calculated. Drew, in my view, has always been a complex character, bold, charming, a bit of a rogue who's clawed his way up the Quartermain ladder. Yet, watching him now, manipulated and drugged without his knowledge, I find myself questioning, is this the Drew we know? Or has Willow's influence twisted him into something unrecognizable? It's a brilliant twist, really, because it blurs the lines between villain and victim in ways that make the story feel so alive and unpredictable. In the early days of my viewing, we had major betrayals like the ones involving the Cassidines. But this current layer of psychological control adds a depth that's both chilling and oddly compelling. Drew doesn't deserve to rot in that state, but Willow's desperation, born from her own past traumas and the need to protect her family, makes her choices feel tragically human. And here's where the emotions really flood in for me, as someone who's seen so many bad guys turn out to be products of their circumstances. The way Sidwell has used Drew and Willow as his proxies, turning them into unwitting tools for his larger agenda, is pure genius drama. He's not even here in Port Charles anymore, yet his influence radiates like a virus, calling in those emergency drugs via encrypted lines, testing Willow's loyalty with subtle threats disguised as offers or favors. It's exhausting, isn't it, for the viewers like us, old-timers who tune in week after week? My heart aches for Willow in these moments because I see the struggle. She's not a monster. She's a mother fighting to keep her kids safe in a town full of predators. But the methods, they break something inside me. In the classic GH style, we've had plenty of redemption arcs, but this one feels more raw, more immediate. Sidwell's disappearing act isn't just convenient, it's a reminder that power isn't static. It fades, and when it does, the people holding the bag suffer the most. I can't help but nod along when I think about how this mirrors real-life cycles of manipulation. Those in the shadows always have backups, even if they vanish. But what truly excites me about this narrative is the potential for that explosion in trust and the fresh proofs that could shatter the illusion. If Brennan's revelations expose Drew's complicity, or at least his vulnerability, in Sidwell's broader web, then Willow's control over him starts to feel like a desperate, self-inflicted trap. She's been delusional in her optimism, thinking she can run this show forever, but with Sidwell's influence waning, the pressure mounts. This isn't just about pills anymore, it's about the illusion of control crumbling under the weight of evidence and isolation. In my years of following General Hospital, I've never seen a storyline pull so hard at the heartstrings while advancing the plot so aggressively. It's like the writers are saying, these characters aren't heroes or villains, they're survivors in a town that never lets up. And Willow's fall from grace could be the turning point that brings real accountability to the surface. Drew's suffering in that locked-in limbo, unable to speak, moving only through blinks, adds such a layer of tragedy. I find myself rooting for him in secret, hoping for a miracle from the doctors or allies like Alexis, or even a return from someone like Sam. But Willow's position? It's collapsing. And that makes the whole thing feel urgent, like we're witnessing a slow-motion collapse of a once unbreakable plan. Let me be honest with you, friends. As an old soap opera veteran who's been through every era, from Luke and Laura's adventures to the modern Cassadine and Quartermain feuds, I appreciate how this Sidwell arc ties back to the show's DNA. Port Charles has always thrived on these hidden conspiracies, from the mob wars to the psychic visions and political power plays. Sidwell's role as a shadowy mastermind who turns allies into pawns feels like a natural evolution, but one that's darker than some of the lighter schemes we've seen. His calls to Willow, those cryptic updates on the drugs, the way he coordinates from afar, it's all building a sense of creeping dread that keeps you glued to the screen. I remember when I first tuned in as a young woman, these stories felt like escapism. But now, at my age, they hit harder, reminding us of the vulnerabilities we all share. Willow's situation, with its mix of maternal love, political ambition, and toxic dependency, mirrors so many real struggles. Women battling systems that exploit them while trying to do the right thing. And Drew? His character's arc has always had that surprising depth, from the playboy to the family man, now reduced to a shell. This current torment isn't easy to watch, but it adds to the show's resilience. In fact, if I'm being critical as a longtime viewer, I have to say the writing here is sharper than some of the recent filler episodes. It's forcing us to confront themes of agency, consent, and the cost of ambition. Sidwell's absence might be his undoing, but it also makes Willow's choices more tragic. She's not just controlling Drew, she's feeding into a system that could consume her too. As we sit here reflecting on all this, I can't shake the feeling that this is one of the most compelling arcs in years. One that blends the personal with the political in a way that's both heartbreaking and hopeful. Will Brennan's evidence tip the scales in Willow's favor? Or will Sidwell's ghost loom larger, forcing even more desperate measures? The show has always excelled at these cliffhangers, and right now, with the drugs running low and the evidence mounting, it's clear Port Charles is in for a reckoning. For all of us longtime fans who grew up with the Quartermains and the Cassadines, this reminds us why we stick around. The stories evolve, the characters grow, and sometimes the twists are so intricate that we find ourselves cheering for the underdogs, even when they're the villains. Willow's journey has been fraught, but it's also a reminder that no one is beyond help or redemption in this town. Drew's fight, even in silence, represents that quiet resilience we all need. And Sidwell's vanishing act, it feels like the universe itself is saying, time's up for the untouchable. In closing, my dear friends, this chapter has me reflecting on my own life, how control, even in small ways, can feel like a lifeline until it slips away. But watching General Hospital, I see the potential for growth, for breaking free. What do you think? Is Willow's fate sealed? Or can a new alliance with Brennan's truths bring some light back to Drew? Share your thoughts with me. These conversations mean the world. Until next week, keep watching, keep believing in the power of these stories to teach us about the human heart. The town of Port Charles may never be the same, and neither will we. Picture this. Willow, with her sharpened instincts honed from years of surviving the chaos here in Port Charles, seems poised to extend her influence in ways that could ripple through the entire town. She's been mastering the art of subtle manipulation, much like the old-school power plays we've seen with the Quartermaines and Cassidines over the years, and now she's setting up layers of control that might bind not just one person, but a network of loyalties and secrets. In my experience, this kind of escalation is what makes General Hospital so compelling. It mirrors the real-world cycles of ambition and fallout, where one person's calculated move can destabilize an entire community. Yet, as someone who's seen plenty of these schemes unravel before, I find myself wondering, is this Willow's way of fighting back against the constraints Sidwell left behind? Or is it her own desperation manifesting into something even more volatile? Either way, it's a bold choice that adds layers of complexity, making her feel more human and tragic than ever before. But then Drew's quiet rebellion steps in, and that's where the story takes a darker turn that genuinely worries me. He's been slipping those drugs through in secret, the ones designed to inhibit nerves and keep the grip of control loose, no matter how hard Willow tries to hold the line. In the classic style of this show, where every action seems to breed a reaction, this move could spark a full-blown disaster, one that might expose hidden alliances, trigger investigations that reach into the highest levels of town politics, or even force Willow into a corner where her newfound power starts eroding from within. I can't help but feel a pang of sympathy for Drew in these moments. He's not the villain here. He's a man trapped in his own body, blinking out his frustrations in a way that speaks volumes about resilience and quiet defiance. The writers have been masterful at blending personal torment with larger societal ripples, and this subplot feels like a reminder of how fragile those controls really are. One leak, one unauthorized supply, and the whole structure could come crashing down.